Peace and greetings. This is Artis. Unclench your jaw, relax your shoulders. So we are going, looking at the 16 keys again, and we're going to go into a little more detail, and we're going to examine. We're going to spend a video, the whole time in a video on one key, right? So this first video is going to be on the first key, and the first key in the 16 keys, and I'll put a list of the 16 keys here and hold it there for a moment. The first one is peace. Okay, so let's look at peace. There is a popular misconception that nonviolence and peace are the same thing. Nonviolence and peace are not the same thing. It's two different ways of being, two different ways of action. Okay, and actually one of them is an inaction, but in that inaction you're allowing action. But at any rate, two different things: nonviolence and peace. Okay, nonviolence is cowardice. Okay, it's accepting of anything. It's weak. Okay, peace is strong. It's forgiving. It's understanding. Right? We don't want to try to make a study of nonviolence, because when you really look at it, there's no such thing as nonviolence. That doesn't exist. There, in no way in our present world is there nonviolence. Nature, in its essence, part of nature is violence. Violence is part of nature. Okay? Just look at the wild animals. All right? The predator and the prey. Okay? It kills the animal, tears the animal apart, eats the animal. That's violence. That's a violent act. Okay? Even the little insects and the bugs. All right? It goes on in our body with the blood cells and all of the different things going on, fighting disease in our body. Fighting, that's a form of violence. Okay? When someone talks about nonviolence, we really want to understand that there really is no such thing as nonviolence. We can do a study on violence, on how we are violent, how to mitigate the violence. But we can't do a study on nonviolence because, again, it doesn't exist. Okay? So, how can violence work with peace? Do violence and peace can they coexist? Do they coexist? Yes, they do. Yes. Because there's certain instances where you have to use violence to keep the peace. Okay? So I'm going to share a personal story with you. My best friend, when we were younger, he later became somewhat of a bully, which is very interesting. He was my best friend growing up, and then as we got older and we started to into high school, and he became somewhat of a bully. He was still my friend, and he was still my best friend. We still hung out together, but he was a bit of a bully to me. Pushed me around a lot, but I was the type of person who was just accepting. He was my friend, and I just was like, okay, well, this is, I don't want to, I can't fight against him or argue with him. I'll just, okay, whatever. And so I would allow all kind of crazy stuff to happen. Like I would go hang out late at night, drinking heavy, driving crazy, doing wild and crazy things. Now, granted, I'm not saying I wasn't responsible for doing those things. Yeah, I was responsible for doing those things, but I was allowing myself to be negatively influenced by the bully. I was allowing it, because of I guess you could say the extremely passive nature that I had at that time, akin to what someone would consider to be nonviolent, just completely aloof. Okay, well, whatever, let's do whatever, right? So as time went on, we distanced ourselves, and then he had some personal issues, got messed up on drugs real bad, and so it became almost to a certain point where it was there was violence. And so what happened is it eventually spilled over into violence. So we were at a graduation for one of our friends, or a mutual friend of ours. We were at the graduation, and so he had stolen something from me like a week or two before, right? And again, he was messed up on drugs real bad, and he was like just completely out of his wits. He was already a wild, crazy, chaotic person, and then the drugs, it just elevated it to the next level, right? So he was a maniac. So, but he was still around because he was our friend. But it was getting worse and worse and worse. And so he showed up at this graduation party at my friend's parents' house, at his house, and we're all outside. First we were inside, right? And then he shows up, and then he knows that I know he stole my money. He was the only person who knew where the money was. He went into he broke into the apartment that me and another friend of mine were staying in, and went to exactly where I had my money hid and stole my money. And I knew he did. And he knew that I knew he did. And so he comes to the party, and at this point, okay, I had been doing a lot of working out with another friend of mine. We have been doing a lot of working out, right? And so I was in really good shape. I was like pumped, And so he walks into the party, and he immediately, like, I can see, we make eye contact, and I'm just like, and I look away, because at this point, I'm done. Because we had gone through so much shit before that I'm done with this. I'm done. He would call or whatever, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm good, bro. And I think I would probably just ignore his calls for the most point. But at any rate, he was pissed. He was mad that I wasn't mad. Now that sounds kind of like weird, but that, and some of y'all might know what I'm talking about. A person can be mad that you're not mad. They'll do something, and then they're like, why aren't they upset about it? Right? Because their mind, it's the drugs, it's the extreme ego, it's his wild chaotic nature. So he was pissed off at me that I wasn't pissed off. I again was ignoring him, and then there's a part of me that just didn't want any confrontation, right? And so he starts yelling and cursing and talking about me to other people. You know what I mean? Like, he's talking to somebody else. He's like, oh, that artist said blah 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 blah. That so and so, that MF, da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm not paying any attention. And then he kind of lunges at me a little bit, and then I back up. I'm like, and I, walk away and go talk to somebody else. And then there comes a point where he sees me, I see him, and he pretty much just jumps and lunges and tries to swing on me in the middle of the party. And so I step back and duck back, and he swipes and he hits one of our friend's girlfriend, right? And then a table comes up, flies up, and it almost breaks. And then my other friend is like, you know what? That's it, man. He's like, kick his ass, man. Kick his ass. And so you have to understand that I was afraid of him. Okay? From childhood. Even though he was my best friend, I was afraid of him. Because I had seen him fight. And I'd seen him beat 2 or 3 people up at one time. So I've seen him beat up people on several occasions. So there was a certain amount of fear in me. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm not. But my other friend was like, yo, when he said kick his ass, it was like, okay, he knew. He was pretty much saying, man, it's time for you to let go of this. It's time for you to release all of that pain and hurt that you've been carrying around with you. This is the way it's got to happen. This is the way it's got to happen. And so I said, fuck it, let's go. So I walk outside. He walks out behind me. I throw up my hands and we fight. And I kind of, just moved into an instinct. Like growing up, my father would always, when I was younger, the mind is really susceptible to programming when you're young. And there's certain things that my dad would do. And one of those things, I would come around the corner and he didn't and he would not see me or whatever and surprise me or whatever. He would immediately throw his hands up like that. And I would throw my hands up like, oh. And he would do a little something and I would do a little something, right? And as a young boy, he would do that with me. And so, and also I had done, some martial arts when I was also younger, but not a lot. But it was what mainly kicked in when the adrenaline was flowing, and I was like, okay, I am afraid of him. So I've got to, instead of nonviolence, backing down, being afraid, getting someone else to take care of it, running away, I said, I have to fight. I have to use violence. I'm about to fight. And then we fought. They had to pull me off of him. He was messed up pretty bad. And after that, my life changed just a little bit. Not, it wasn't something big like, epiphany, but my life changed just a little bit. I was no longer carrying around the fear, and I was able to let go of some of that cowardice that I had, of not doing anything about anything, just letting things happen, right? And shortly after that, I was more courageous. And so I was, I said, you know what, I'm going to move. And so I moved to another city, and then, I started moving around the United States. And so it was somewhat of a turning point for me when I used violence to keep the peace, to protect the people that were around me. Like he hit my my other best friend's girlfriend. You know what I mean? So it's like, I used violence to, number one, keep the peace in that room. But number two, more importantly, for my own peace. For my own peace, because fear is terrible. Fear will destroy you. And I walked around so many years with fear. The fear that he instilled in me, it was projecting out from everyone else. You know what I mean? I was relating everyone else with that fear, right? And once that fear was gone, once I was able to break that, where that was, where that happened at, right? Once I was able to break that fear piece, my whole world, kind of sort of turned a little bit. It made the trajectory was turned. So that's one, and that's my own personal story of how, violence helped me to keep my peace and helped me to keep the peace of everything that was going on around me, to help stop the chaos. So we have to look at it from a bigger perspective, not being able to, not just putting it in one basket, saying that violence is bad. No, to a certain, it's mitigating the violence. It's keeping the violence to a minimum. Okay. So where does this violence come from? And more importantly, how do we, as in my extreme, and then I do this, my extreme instance is showing, I had to fight to stop the immediate violence, but we have to fight in the mind, okay, to stop our violent thoughts, okay? And the violent thoughts are coming from somewhere. Now, most of us live in a world where we don't have to confront violence every single day. You know what I mean? However, we are given violent images every single day. When you look at the news, when you look at, social media, there's violence, right? That gets into our head. And it affects the way we talk, the way we relate to people, right? So we have to address the violence going on in our mind. We address the violence going on in our mind so we don't speak violent words to people. Violent words can hurt sometimes more than punching somebody in the face. A word can sometimes hurt more than punching somebody in the face. From my own personal experience, I've had people say things to me that just really tore me down. I would much rather them have punched me in the face, okay? So we have to relegate our thoughts and then our speech. You can say something, again, and it crushes somebody, right? And it's coming from a place of, and here we go, I'm going to talk about the only two emotions that we have, okay? The only two emotions that we have are fear and love, okay? Fear and love. And everything else comes from out of that. Violence is an offspring of fear. Even with the animals, right? Because if if a mama bear is afraid of is afraid that you're gonna injure her cubs, she's afraid that you're gonna take her cubs away from her, she will kill you, right? So fear is the base of violence. So we have to address the fear. What are you afraid of? What are we afraid of? Okay, what are we afraid of? Sometimes we're afraid of our ego being damaged. someone can say something to us that we didn't like, and we take offense to it when they're trying to help us, and then we speak out in a violent way towards them. Like, what are you talking about? You know, whatever. Dismiss them. Man, you're dumb for saying that. You're stupid, you know, whatever. Because our ego, we are in fear that someone is going to diminish our ego. Okay? They're going to make us feel bad. Well, it's all about the way no one can make you feel bad. Okay? You can allow them to make you feel bad. You can allow what they say to make you feel bad, but they can't make you feel bad. That's under your control. Your happiness is under your control. Okay? Someone can bring something into it. Someone can come into your life and make you more happy or add to the happiness you already have, but no one can make you happy. Maybe for a short period of time, but eventually you're going to come back to what your problem is. And a lot of it, if we speak negative, mean words to people, if we are physically violent with people, it's because we are afraid of something. It's because we're afraid of something. Okay? The best way to mitigate violence, right, to keep the peace, is to operate from a place of love. Right? You operate from a place of love. That's going to keep you from saying violent things to people. Let's say, for instance, you're a boss, okay? And you have an employee that's doing something incorrectly. Now, where are you coming from? Are you coming from a place of fear or love? The fear can be, okay, they're not doing the job correctly, right? And then so you take that as you watch the whole chain of events. This person is not doing the job correctly. They're not portioning it correctly. That's going to cost me. That's going to lose me money. The businesses are going to go down, and I'm going to have to close up shop. And you know, all these things start running off in your head about this person not using correct portion control, right? But if you come at it from a place of love, if you think about, okay, you know what? How can I make this person understand that using that portion control is important to me, right? Think about it from that aspect. Don't, this is incorrect. You know, I was a manager for Ruby Tuesdays and for Applebee's for several years, both of those companies. And in my personal experience, when you are trying to get someone to meet the standard, if you come at them disrespectfully, yelling and screaming, I've seen managers that do that. You don't get any results. You don't get any results. When you can ask anybody who was working with me when I was a manager, like, I was always like, okay, how can I help? What can I do to help this situation? Because I care about you as an individual. You know what I mean? And so how can I help this situation? That's not the correct portion control. So what am I doing, and how can I help? Well, maybe I can show a technique that makes it easier for that person to have a consistent pour or a consistent portion size, right? Maybe, whatever the case might, maybe a scale, maybe a plastic bag, whatever it is, I'm going to try to figure out how I can help this person do their job more effectively, because in the end, it helps them. So how are we approaching people, right? Are we coming from a place of fear, or are we coming from a place of love? If we're afraid of something, we're going to be in a tense mode, and that fear is going to come out as violence. You know what I mean? Propagating violence on people. So keeping the peace in your immediate area, it you have scenarios, right, that maybe you are around someone who is extremely, not extremely, but like they say negative things. And one way that there's a subtle kind of violence that people use, and I used to do this a lot, and it's being sarcastic. Being sarcastic to a certain extent is coming from a place of fear, and it is somewhat of a violent act. Okay? When you joke about someone's shortcoming or a fault that you see in them, and you make a joke about it, and you say, I'm just being funny, I'm just being sarcastic, that is a form of violence, because that is coming from a place of fear. Trace it all the way back. It may be as simple as, you're not paying attention to me. You're not paying attention to me. I'm afraid that you don't notice me, you don't see me. And so I'm going to say something funny and sarcastic to get an emotional reaction out of you. Right? That is a form of perpetuating violence on somebody. Right? Again, we're talking about mitigating the violence. We're talking about keeping the peace. All right? So, and again, I want to say that, right, violence is non-violence does not exist. Again, I want to reiterate, non-violence does not exist. We are dealing with violence every single day, all day long. We want to mitigate. We're talking about mitigating the violence. And when you mitigate the violence, you're keeping the peace. Right? When you mitigate the violence, you keep the peace. That's the whole idea behind what I'm trying to say here. So, you know, the world that we live in right now is extremely violent. And one of my personal way is to really pay close attention to what I'm consuming on social media, the things that I'm looking at. I have a tendency to like to watch people get knocked out. Sometimes I like, wow, oh my God, and it's like a train wreck. You know, it's hard to look away from a train wreck. When there's an accident on the street, right? It's hard not to take a peek to see, oh man, I wonder what happened. You're not, but you're like, it's just curiosity. So there is a idea of trying to keep from doing that, right? Paying attention to that scroll, you know what I mean? If you get hooked on it, if you'll see like someone get knocked out, right? And then you're like, oh, you watch the whole thing. Give it that algorithm's like, oh, they're watching it. Bam, here comes another one. So you have to be careful with that algorithm. And meditating every single morning. That's my main tool, my main go-to. That's the thing that keeps me peaceful, right? Is my meditation. Doing my yoga, doing my physical yoga, and doing the meditation. And you know, when I say yoga, I mean meditation is part of it. Because you can't have yoga without meditation. they don't go to, they don't, they go together. I'm going off on a tangent here real quick, but yoga is the cessation of the fluctuation of the mind, which means that it's a yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Your mind is always jumping from here to there, from here to there, from here to there. So yoga is like, it stops it. It's like, hold up, stop. Focus on that. Whatever that is. But yoga helps you to catch it and then focus it. Not to stop it. You don't stop the mind. Okay? The mind will make a connection. Okay? Understand that. The mind will eventually make a connection. Once you bring it to one point of focus and all of your focus is on that thing, and I'll use, for example, a red rose. So just say, for instance, that you're sitting in your meditation seat. Your eyes are closed. You're breathing, noticing the breath, and then you focus all your attention and awareness on the idea in your mind of a red rose. All you keep thinking about is red rose, red rose. It's all in your mind. You have it. You see the red rose. Eventually, you are going to lose track of time. If you continuously do this meditation over and over and over again, you're going to lose track of time. Now, the key is to focus on the same thing every single time, every single morning. Do it every single day, right? There's a story, and I'll share it in another video, about my experience with that, about losing track of time. But you want to lose track of time. So that is my biggest tool that's in my tool belt in order to keep my peace, which is my meditation. So that's peace, right? The first of the 16 keys. And again, I'll have, here we go with the 16 keys here posted. And the next video is going to be on the next key, right? And if there are any questions, comments, or concerns, you know what to do. Until then, my friends, unclench your jaw and relax your shoulders. Peace.